Hello everyone and welcome. We are here today to celebrate a very, very important announcement. Our good friend Daniel is about to premiere the greatest Zelda video ever. Divine Beast, Vah Ruta, Grief, Tragedy, and rudimentary non-linearity dungeon design in Zelda. Until then, we will be doing a quick Q&A. Hello, Clifford. So, if Daniel would love to join after, he can. But if he doesn't, that's fine. We're just here to celebrate his greatness. Hello, 𝗵𝗲𝗛𝗀𝗃. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. 𝗵𝗲. I just need to do a quick setting change. If you have any questions, anyone, go ahead, let me know. There we go. All right, I'll be back in 10 seconds. I'm back. I had to get my Coke Zero.
Hello friends, welcome back to Dungeon Design in Zelda, an ongoing series examining, well, the dungeon design in Zelda. I'm so glad to be back at it again and starting a new game. That's right, we're jumping into Breath of the Wild. There's a touch of irony to be had here jumping into Breath of the Wild with a critical eye. I haven't exactly kept it a secret that Breath of the Wild is to date my favorite game ever. I also haven't kept my fascination and love for the dungeons of the Zelda series a secret either. For me, it's one of the best parts of almost every Zelda game. I love the feeling of unraveling these places, like picking apart a tangled knot. So how is it then that me, someone who loves dungeons so much, holds Breath of the Wild in such high regard when it falls so short in the dungeon category? Well, I guess it just does everything outside of those dungeons so well that I can't help but love it despite those shortcomings. Or maybe it stems from me being a contrary piece of work that just doesn't like being told what to do. A game where I don't have to listen to anybody's directions and just do what I want to do is kind of appealing. No, really though, the world design outside of the dungeons in this game is superb, the best in the series in my opinion. And that idea of free exploration, of openness and non-linearity influences every aspect of this game's design, including that design with.
Can I just say the editing Daniel always puts in his videos is some of the greatest editing I've ever seen.
How radically different it all feels from past games. And sure, that's a valid standpoint to take, but not a sentiment that I necessarily share 100%. I don't personally view the shrines as dungeons, so much as they are stand-ins for finding heart pieces in the overworld, while also doubling as fast travel points. The actual dungeon tropes, such as getting a map, rewarding us with a full heart container after a boss fight, and granting us a new item, or in this game's case the champion abilities, all of that, it's all here in the Divine Beasts. But we'll get into that soon. As usual, let's just start with a quick overview of some pre-dungeon stuff that we need to do. Let's hop into it. Now, this being Breath of the Wild, you might think that aside from the Great Plateau, that there isn't anything mandatory that you actually have to do before any of the Divine Beasts, right? I mean, technically the Divine Beasts themselves aren't even mandatory. You could skip them and go straight to Ganon if you wanted.
For those who don't know, this will be sort of a longer video, just because of all of the effort and time Daniel puts into his walkthrough videos.
Glide over to the Divine Beast snack and board it. That's been tried. Doesn't work. Of course, there is also a plethora of optional stuff you can choose to or not to do, such as going to Kakariko Village to talk to Impa, getting the Champion's Tunic, upgrading the runes at the Hateno Ancient Tech Lab, and tons of side quests. I personally decided to go get the Master Sword before doing any of the Divine Beasts, because I just love having it and being able to throw sword beams around. And then I also figured that while I'm here, I might as well do Trial of the Sword while I'm at it. Of course, that means completing at least 40 shrines to ensure that you have enough hearts to extract the blade in the first place. And if I'm doing those 40 shrines, I might as well collect a bunch of Korok seeds along the way and expand my inventory, right? And if I'm doing that, I might as well get a good horse too, which means that I need to get the ancient horse gear and... See, this is what happens when I play this game. I get so easily sidetracked. My sessions playing this game are just a series of me saying, oh, just one more thing before I do that. Oh, just one more thing before I do that. Over and over again before I do anything of actual story significance. But that's also what I love about the game. People have complained about the world being too empty or what have you, but I
working on
just how
Breath of the
much
Wild
stuff there is to do
stuff now.
Everywhere you go. I adore that
I wonder
sense
if
of
we will
exploration.
get to see the return of Greg.
World. Another bit of
Double
freedom
Rainbow.
this
Nice.
game offers is that unlike previous games that we've examined, there is no set dungeon order. You can complete the Divine Beasts in
This is
any
also a
order you
small
like,
example
or
on
choose
why
to
I never
skip them
do
entirely.
any
Vah Ruta
normal
in particular
reaction videos,
feels
because
to
it's just me like
the
staring at the screen
first
doing absolutely
dungeon.
nothing.
The game sends you in this general direction early on by suggesting you visit Kakariko Village. From Kakariko, you have a great view of the Lanayru wetlands, where you might decide to go visit this shrine or the nearby tower. But scattered all around this area are a bunch of Zoras who will accost you and ask you to go see Prince Sidon at Inogo Bridge, which is right beside the Lanayru Tower. Basically, there is this entire area of the map that funnels you towards this Divine Beast, which is not the case for the other three. Maybe that's because the
Sidon
other
is
three
in this
are
video.
more openly visible in the overworld and therefore easier to find.
When
But it
everyone
really feels
played
like
Breath of the
world
Wild, where
design
did
is
you all
pushing
go to
towards
for
this one first?
your
And in fairness, it is
first,
a good starting
dungeon?
place, since it's
Or a Divine
probably the
Beast?
simplest
I don't know. Some people
Divine
don't call them
Beast,
dungeons,
and Mipha's
but,
Grace is more useful in the early game than it
Do
is
most
later
people
when you're
just
loaded
go
up on
towards,
hearts.
Vah
Once
Ruta,
you
or do
meet
they,
Sidon, he'll ask you to
like,
head
did you
towards
accidentally
Zora's
stumble
domain.
upon
Though
one of the
you
others?
can
Because I think the game
actually
kind of
skip this,
pushes you
and there is
towards
alternative
Zora's
dialogue
domain.
If you don't meet him here first. The path to Zora's domain is under constant rainfall thanks to the Divine Beast, which is spewing an unending flow of water into the air. At Zora's domain, King Dorephan will explain that this heavy rainfall threatens to destroy the dam at their water reservoir, and asks for your help appeasing the divine beast. He gives you the Zora armor, which will also be required since it allows you to swim
was your
up
first.
Waterfalls. After
Good
a
for
quick
you.
discussion with Muzu, the racist Zora, Sidon will ask you to prepare yourself with at least
I think I
20
prefer
shock arrows,
going there
and Muzu
first as
will
well.
advise that you can load up on them up on Polymus Mountain, where a Lynel has made its home, and has a stock of them. If you have enough of them
Daniel
already,
just did such
then
an
you
amazing
can skip
job editing
But
this.
otherwise, it is actually a good way
I'm
to
jealous.
load up on plenty of shock arrows. You can also find the other matching pieces of the Zora armor set by showing this lady a photo of a red Lynel, and by finding this chest in Toto Lake. You know, if you want the whole set, that is.
And yes,
Once
there
you're
is a
all
link
prepared,
to the
you
original
and
video
Sidon
in the
can take
description.
the attack to the divine beast. You can ride on his back while he swims around the reservoir lake, use Cryonis to destroy the ice that the divine beast launches at you, then swim these waterfalls and shoot the orbs on the divine beast's back with shock arrows. Slight confession here, but I personally love these attack on the divine beast sections. They're really exciting, and the idea of having to work together with another character and fight your way inside this giant machine is very different from what we've seen in the past, which often has just come down to stumbling upon a dungeon entrance somewhere. This sequence in particular somewhat calls to mind for me the chase towards the sand ship in Skyward Sword, which I also loved. Sadly though, this scenario is short-lived. It only takes 4 successful shots with shock arrows to stun Vah Ruta, and personally, I would have loved to have seen this sequence expanded upon even further. Sure, Ruta will also launch these ice attacks at you, but I personally never found this to be much of a threat, since you can very easily use Cryonis to counteract this. But alas,
Everyone is
once
sus.
all 4
What are you
orbs are
talking about?
zapped, the divine beast
McGruber.
will be stunned, allowing you
It's
to
more
board it
speciesism
and head
since Zora and
inside.
Hylians aren't the same species. Yeah,
I'll see you
yeah.
back at Zora's domain.
There is that weird relationship in the game. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone thought it was just like, oh, innocent and cute when Princess Ruto and Mipha had their crushes on Link. But Breath of the Wild maybe goes a bit too far with the fish things. Yeah, I didn't. I think most people just choose to kill it because I mean, after all, he is trying to kill you. So just like get it over with, and I'm pretty sure it might be a lot of people's first Lynel that they actually come in contact with as well.
Divine Beast Vah Ruta, named after Ruto, the Zora water sage and princess from Ocarina of Time. As far as dungeon theming goes,
Where do
this
they
is
live?
essentially
The Zora?
a water-themed dungeon minus
Usually they
swimming,
live
set
in
over the
your
backdrop
backyard.
of the rather ubiquitous ancient Sheikah architecture. As far as Vah Ruta itself goes, this one feels incredibly rudimentary in my opinion, which is a touch ironic, since water-themed dungeons have been notorious in past games for their difficulty. The puzzles all feel very straightforward, and there's just a general lack of enemies. Not counting the boss, there's literally only 3 enemies in the entire dungeon, all of them being Guardian Scouts. That number goes up to 10 if you count the Malice eyeballs, and then 11 if you count the boss.
I don't think anyone counts the
11
Malice eyeballs,
enemies,
but I
including the
would
boss.
say that
is
Breath
an
of the Wild
absurd
2
lack
may
of combat
have
in a main dungeon. Previous games have had
slightly
individual rooms with more enemies
different
than that.
variations
Even
of the
entry
Malice
room
eyeballs.
of the Deku Tree,
That
the
will
most
be interesting.
tutorial dungeon of all tutorial dungeons, nearly matches this total number in this one room. This is made even worse by the fact that those 7 Malice eyeballs, which make up 70%
Stop
of the
hating,
enemies
Daniel.
here, can be killed in a single hit.
Just let the
Considering
eyeballs
threat
be
that the
eyeballs.
divine beasts represent, I just feel like I should be in more danger while I'm in here. This should be the sort of undertaking that I need to rigorously prepare for, but sadly,
This is kind of also
is
why
one of the
I think
easiest areas of
this
the
was
game, in my
intended to be like
opinion.
the first divine beast you
Sauntering
go
through
to.
Central Hyrule is more dangerous than this place. This enemy presence isn't even increased in Master Mode. I'm not asking for Hyrule Warriors here, that would be overkill, but this Divine Beast really,
Ketra says this is such a great video, to be honest. It is. Like, the editing is magnificent. Nintendo should hire Daniel to make their trailers. That way he can give us all of the
as I mentioned
inside
before,
scoops.
The puzzles here are all very rudimentary. Because of the open layout of the Divine Beast, there's also almost no navigational challenge. There are no keys or locked doors even, unless you count this gate that you open with Cryonis. The main puzzle mechanic instead stems from the ability to control the trunk of the Divine Beast itself. By moving the trunk, a spray of water can be directed to various points of the dungeon which, depending on where it lands, can have varying effects on the mechanisms within. For example, turning these large water wheels in either direction. Despite the lack of navigational challenge and the simplicity of the puzzles, I actually really do like this gimmick. Being able to control this freely at any time, riding these rotating water wheels, and being able to traverse the dungeon is actually pretty fun, despite
I'm back.
those
I had the doggo back
issues.
inside.
I like the idea of manipulating the dungeon itself in such a flexible way, and in a way that is meaningful to the progression.
Daniel.
I also think this dungeon uses its verticality really nicely. The
No, that's
dungeon
from
has
Bonnie. Bonnie, you were a
main
genius.
interior floors, the trunk, which can extend upwards, and the roof. And because of the way they're stacked within the structure, with this largely open concept allowing you to glide between floors, the dungeon has a very cohesive layout. It feels like it all makes physical sense. Nothing against the dungeon layouts of previous games, of course. I love those winding, twisting labyrinths.
I don't even know how to respond to that.
I also have to admit that often outside of a central room, the
do
areas
you need
of
a hug?
many previous dungeons have felt disjointed in a way that you just don't get here. That idea is a bit of a double-edged sword, however. It is great that this all makes physical sense within this space, and that the entire dungeon is basically loaded into one area at once and is freely traversable. But the downside to this is that this limits the scope of the dungeon. They've somewhat trapped themselves in a box by doing this. From the outside, these Divine Beasts look massive, and they are, but compared to previous mainline Zelda dungeons, they're actually very small in scope. A dungeon with 3 floors, 4 if you count the roof, does sound huge.
Yeah, I agree with this. This is like
a single room, or worse, just a component
compared
of a
to normal
room.
dungeons. They did like the Skyward Sword effect with the dungeons. The Skyward Sword effect is like Nintendo had a thing where they didn't want to. So with Twilight Princess, they made the overworld really huge, and they had complaints that it felt empty. So instead of making a larger overworld with Skyward Sword, they ended up making smaller areas, but they crammed a bunch of stuff into those smaller areas, which is why we got the 3 provinces or 3 whatever.
All the more clear if you look at a
and then in
urn, turn it upside down, and
Breath of the Wild, it seems like they did that with the Divine Beasts, to where like there are these massive things, which they are huge Divine Beasts, but the downside of that is they have to actually fit the dungeon inside the body of the thing that they created.
Because it gets so overused throughout the game, it does feel somewhat lacking.
Even though
in variety.
they are huge compared to normal dungeons, they are a lot smaller than you would be expecting. But they cram a lot of puzzles and stuff, and just like there's just tons of different layers and multiple ways of solving each of the puzzles and everything. See, like this, like you can see like the turning gears and everything, and the gears actually do stuff inside the dungeon. It's just not like turning on a wall or something. Oh my god, look at that.
Games were. Vah Ruta is modeled in this style after
that one image probably took Daniel a ton of work that y'all just seen.
The only instance I can think of there being any likeness of an elephant in this series is the statues in Link's Awakening.
No, there is an elephant in the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer.
Dream World, not Hyrule.
Maybe it's a water bison, but an idiot called me out for calling it an elephant, and I'm just going to stick to that.
Elephant, a creature with
so it's
no
an elephant.
significance to the Kingdom of Hyrule. What that reason is, is still a little beyond me. But maybe of all these ideas, the elephant is the one that made the most sense from a level design standpoint, since there's no underwater swimming in this game. The game is also far more explicit about presenting the history of its dungeons.
Bonnie, you should get the book. It is a very delicious book.
Here without any explanation. 10,000 years before the Great Calamity, the technologically advanced Sheikah built the 4 divine beasts and the Guardians as an overpowered army in order to subdue Ganon. While the Guardians are autonomous, the divine beasts require a pilot with whom they could form a spiritual bond. In preparation for Ganon's prophesied return 100 years ago, the Kingdom of Hyrule excavated these divine beasts and planned to use them against Ganon just like their ancestors did. Vah Ruta in particular was excavated somewhere near Zora's domain, though if I had to guess where exactly, it would be this quarry area just to the north of Zora's domain, Ulria's Grotto. What the Kingdom of Hyrule didn't account for was their adversary being so cunning. Ganon learned from his past defeat and had a strategy of his own, turning the weapons found to use against him into his own personal army. When Ganon returned 100 years ago, Mipha rushed to her divine beast, only to find an agent, an extension of Ganon's power inside, killing her and taking control of the giant machine. Okay, let's talk about the music for a moment. Many people critique Breath of the Wild's soundtrack for being uninteresting or too toned down, but I personally really love it. The quieter moments of the game make the sparse but deliberate use of music stand out all the more.
The soundtrack
the music of Vah Ruta goes,
I know I kind of did in my top 10 video, but I was like,
palpable
this is the top
of
10 best and worst things about Breath of the Wild,
piano with what sounds like
which was a great video. You all should go check it out.
For this
and I think like I start the video out by saying like Breath of the Wild is basically a perfect 10 out of 10, and this was before any of the DLC came out. And so when you are critiquing a 10 out of 10, something that's absolutely perfect, the things that you do put on as a negative are it's essentially just coming across as nitpicking, because when nothing's wrong about something, then you just have to kind of exaggerate these little credences that you may have. And that's why people complain like, oh, it rains too much when I'm trying to climb. And it's like, yeah, but wouldn't it be a bit too easy if
activated and you have to make
or
your way
like
to the boss, the
cooking the food is too complicated,
with this dark
and it's
sense
like, yeah,
of urgency. It's worth
there's like tons of stuff that you can make and like different variations, but wouldn't you rather have the option to do it than to not cook? Like, you can find guides online, or you can just like buy meals pre-cooked, and there's people that tell you how to make all the good meals and stuff, and it's not really that hard. Just like prime rib or prime meat, whatever.
It's also well
basically the rarer or better the food.
Code SOS signal
like, don't obviously put it with monster parts or like Boku guts, but it's just like in real life. You make a meal, get some fish, some spices or peppers, make it, and it's great. And then everything's named appropriately. So like a rushroom will give you a bit of speed. Hardy or mighty bananas give you strength.
As her prison,
because mighty, strong, so everything's labeled appropriately. Like peppers help you in the cold, the watermelons and stuff help you in the heat. So I think they did a good job of explaining it through the game, but it's still a complaint that people have, because when you're complaining about something that's perfect, you have to pick out these little small things. Now an actual major complaint is people didn't like that there was no traditional style dungeons. What's his name? I saw Jesse was live, so I took a break from my Roe vs. Wade celebration to see if there's any Zelda news. No.
Boarding platform. Up this ramp, we'll find
Brittany?
the first floor central room.
Sadly, no Zelda news. We're just watching Daniel's video that he has premiered. It's a very amazing video. Check it out. There's a link in the description if you want to watch with me.
Stone here. The gate blocking it can easily be lifted using Cryonis. Once the map is downloaded, our objective is to activate 5 terminals spread out around the Divine Beast. As I mentioned before, you can actually do these in any order you'd like, but I'll cover them in the order that that I find to be the most logical and natural in terms of when and how you'd come across them. The first one is right here in this central room. You just need to use magnesis to turn this crank and raise this platform.
Says stables and many other buildings had posters.
Outside of the Divine Beast,
I imagine he's referring, or she, I don't know, is referring to
here inside the of these two water wheels. Simply use
where did you get these designs?
The water flow
so
that
great.
Turns the wheel, step
I think
in, and
Kat is referring to the pictures and posters of how to make certain foods. And then there's characters that tell you how to make certain stuff as well.
So you'll need to time
obviously, the first you come across is the old man wanting you to get like a wild boar,
and onto this ledge. Once you've made it up here, there's
Hylian bass, some kind of fish, I don't know, and I think peppers. And then it gives you the
hallway from here out to the Divine Beast's trunk,
sweater.
Where you'll find the next terminal. The easiest way to reach
I think
it
so.
Is to
or you can just go straight to the shrine and then he gives it to you, or you get it afterwards.
Back to its upright position so
but
that
it's easier if you get it beforehand. But it is just like an extra quest that you don't really have to do.
The final terminal is found here in this very top room. The terminal itself is surrounded by flames, so we'll need to use this crank to open the hatch in the ceiling.
If anyone's wondering why Daniel was the person that I asked to help me out on my YouTube channel a long time ago, this video is an obvious answer to that. Like, just look at the editing. Like, he had amazing editing when he was doing his own videos and then working with Zelda Informer. And now it's
the larger water wheel.
It's just
requires some tricky timing
gotten
with
so much better. Like,
aside from that, the only thing
I
left
put
to
a
do
lot of
is
crucial
activate the central control unit,
detail and time. I take my time on my videos when I'm editing. I try to make sure that everything I say is visually represented on the screen. If I'm talking about an interview, you will see that interview on the screen. If I reference a quote, you will see the actual quote. Or if we're talking about an article, you'll see the article on screen. That way people can't be like, oh, well, you're just making this up. And it's like, no, like you can see right here, this is 𝗟𝗵𝗲
Ganon's malice
on screen saying it. We're just saying what he said.
This is the extension
but then there's people who's like, oh, this is clickbait. And like, nope.
And took control of the Divine Beast.
You can call it clickbait if you want, but
it's up to
like,
us
we're not even the ones saying it. It was literally Nintendo that said it.
So easy.
And
alright, visually speaking,
if we're talking about a dungeon, we have a clip of that dungeon, or the room in that dungeon, or the boss of that dungeon, or a certain puzzle in that dungeon, and that's what takes my videos so long, because there are a lot of people that'll just put up like a Call of Duty gameplay clip, usually it's not even theirs, and just talk over it and be like, oh, so here's all the Nintendo news, new Kid Icarus, new Xenoblade, new Zelda, blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, but why am I watching a Call of Duty gameplay clip when you're talking about Nintendo game news? Shouldn't you be like showing the article or the trailers at least for those games that you're talking about?
His long range is going
or
to
they'll
be
have
the
like a Zelda clip in a Zelda video, but it'll be the same clip playing out for like 30 seconds while they talk about 10 different things.
But if you're skilled enough with dodges and flurry rushes,
look how
you should be
huge
able to
that
slice
is.
through that first phase pretty quickly. There is of course a second phase to the battle. The arena will flood, forcing us onto these small platforms. With such a small amount of space to operate,
which boss was it? There was one of the
using Cryonis both to create platforms and
it may be the last one.
His own
that like the window to do the flurry rush is so large that you can get like,
sometimes it's the easiest
I think you can get 2 flurry rushes in.
You can also pull off some
once.
headshots with your bow to stun the blight and open him up to attack. Flurry rushes sadly won't be of any use anymore due to the aforementioned water in this room, so stun him, get close, and deal some damage. Or use the Master Sword to just cheese the fight entirely. Your call. Just something worth mentioning, but I do kind of like that Waterblight mirrors 𝗵𝗲 in a way, with a mastery of water and both of their weapons being spears. Just a neat detail, though maybe a corrupted version of 𝗵𝗲 herself would have made for a cooler boss fight, sort of like the hollows that we saw in Age of Calamity. In fact, if we had gotten that, that would have been an
in the chat, what was your favorite
playthrough. But
Divine
overall,
Beast?
Waterblight Ganon is a pretty easy boss fight, but considering it's also the first one, or at least it seems like it's meant to be, I guess I can forgive that. Once defeated, we get our heart container, activate the central control unit for real this time, and Mipha's spirit will appear. After some quick dialogue, she'll reward us with Mipha's grace, which is basically like being able to carry a fairy around with us at all times. Handy. The divine beast is now under the rightful control of its champion and can take its place in preparation for our impending duel with Calamity Ganon. So that's the dungeon. Overall, Vah Ruta works for me as a sort of introductory dungeon, but maybe it shouldn't be that. The issue is that this game has no set dungeon order. So this could be the very last one you do and end up being significantly easier than the others. That isn't a cohesive difficulty curve to follow, but more importantly, it takes a lot of effort to get to the Divine Beast, and then it all ends up being rather easy in the end. This shouldn't be an introductory dungeon because we already had the Great Plateau and its 4 shrines as a tutorial section, so the Divine Beast should be more challenging than that area. This brings me to an idea that I've had on my mind while comparing the Divine Beasts to classic Zelda dungeons: linearity versus straightforwardness. When critiquing games, I think there is this sort of misconception overall that linear is bad and non-linear is good, but I don't think there is anything inherently bad or good about either of those gameplay concepts. It all comes down to execution. Daniel. There are very good linear games and very good non-linear games. There's also this idea of linearity being equal to easy or straightforward. But if looking at classic Zelda dungeons and now the Divine Beasts has solidified anything for me, it's that this is not the case. These Divine Beasts are non-linear, the most non-linear of any Zelda dungeon I've broken down to date, and yet they are among the easiest and most straightforward. Many classic Zelda dungeons are extremely linear, even if they don't seem to be. The Forest Temple doesn't seem linear with all of its branching paths, but there are hidden keys and locked doors preventing you from making progress outside of an intended sequence of events. In that way, even the most sprawling and open of classic Zelda dungeons are still linear in terms of their progression. The Divine Beasts give us an open floor plan and a general objective of activating 5 terminals, but you can activate them in any order you'd like, which makes them non-linear. Is one 5 terminals?
But how many keys do they have?
It all comes down to execution, and in terms of that execution,
that's a joke from
some
a very difficult,
untapped potential here. The Divine Beasts
obnoxious
are an
quiz I made
experience,
once
but for me,
for the
falls short
Highland Gamescast's Triforce Trivia section.
Classic Zelda games have provided. Does this make it bad? No, but it does make them not as good. There is a distinction there. But where this Divine Beast excels is its atmosphere and flexible sense of traversal. Scaling up to the very top of this massive mechanism and gliding down to the various floors and platforms feels awesome. It's really fun to do, and the overall vibe of this place is tragic in the best way. It's done really well. So mainly what my criticism comes down to is that I wish this were bigger, more challenging, and lasted longer. Overall, this video has probably lasted longer than it would take for most people to complete the Divine Beast. And as someone who loves the sense of exploration in Zelda dungeons, I just wish they'd gone bigger with it. Again, this doesn't mean it's bad, but it does feel like there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, Bonnie, exactly. He put it perfectly.
This video. Before we end this off, I just wanted to take a moment to say
look at this Sin Slate. Oh, there's Tetra. I know her. There's Grey Mage, Brenda, Tetra, Callie, Ethan, 3G, Gail, Hylian West, Justin, Clifford, Longhead, Midnight, Naomi, Bonnie, Joseph, Kyle, Steve, the Krusty Fox, Gus Laz, Magnus, Vince, Charles, Aaron, Leisha, Candy, Magnus, Gabora, SuperNX64, love the name, Retro Guy Gaming, 𝗵𝗵𝗲 𝗔𝗵𝗲. Enjoy the in card. Yeah, is it new? Yeah, it is. It looked really good. Congrats to you, Daniel. I suppose I'll be here answering your all's questions. Let's take a look at the rest of the amazing videos on Daniel's channel here. Oh, I haven't liked this one. I'll go ahead and give it a like. then we'll go on. See, look how good all of his streams look. You guys, oh, there's another friend. Game Explain. Yeah, so like dungeon design, getting the Hylian shield. Oh, sadly I skipped this one, I'm sorry. 31 minutes, okay. Let's just put on his last stream. We'll see if we can get the man, the legend himself on here to chat for a few minutes. Maybe we can interview him about his amazing editing skills. So, one moment.
Yeah. How am I doing? I'm doing good, thank you for asking. I get a little sleepy today, to be honest. So I apologize if I'm a little more low energy today, but you know what it. Oh my gosh, Retro Guy coming in with the gifts, gifting the memberships. Thank you so much, guys. Make sure you go and claim those, by the way. He's gifting 5 memberships, so go claim your channel membership. By the way, I haven't quite sorted out how to do this, but because it's the summer, yesterday was the first day of summer, I think. It was sometime this week. Anyways, I'm going to be running soon a sale on my Threadless shop.
Oh, sorry about that. We have it, guys. The man, the myth, the legend, the burger, the captain, the burger son, Capt Burgerson himself is about to bless us with his presence. I don't know if I'm ready for this. I might be a bit too shy. I think I'm getting nervous. Guys, what do I say to him?
Rescue all the eggs from pirates. And that's it. There's Jesse.
Yeah, there's Jesse. Whoa. Ha.
Also, Midnight Naomi's here. Welcome as well. Joseph thought the direct made the game seem not fun. I'm such a JRPG.
That was an accident. But it's there for whenever he does come on. Hi, okay. See, he used a great method on boss rush and Skyward Sword. What do you mean by that, Bonnie?
JRPGs, and I'm like,
what great method did he use?
I don't know. It's just like something doesn't click.
Was it
like some games
like just being a perfect Zelda player?
I really got into Earthbound and it clicked.
Because that's usually
but then I tried
how I imagine him. Like, have you ever seen him fight a Lionel? Like, if you ever need a pick-me-up, or if you're ever depressed, sad, if your wife just left you, whatever. Like, if you need to feel a little bit better, just watch Daniel fight a Lionel.
If you want to wait till the sale goes live,
yeah.
I'll ping everybody in Discord or something. Or I'll post about it as well. By the way, so Jesse's claimed one
glitch
of those
in the
5
Matrix. What glitch in the Matrix? I'm sorry. What's going on?
And,
I'm sorry.
You know, it's there. It's there for the taking. I'll just put this out here as a side note that Friday's video is up for early access, so for channel members and Patreon supporters. So muffins, muffins. Welcome, Natsu. Oh my gosh, a burger banana sticker, hot dog. We also have notebooks. Hold on. This is the one I got for myself.
Daniel is just getting a refill of his coffee, but momentarily he will be here, and he's much more entertaining than I.
Because I have so many notebooks.
I'm not alive, says Gabe. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a weird love for stationery. I apologize.
Like, are you like unalive, like a zombie, or like just eternal, like a vampire, or like a ghost,
can on Twitch or not.
Or just dead? I
think on Twitch that it just.
Which version of not alive are you?
But either way, they don't have to like claim it on their end.
When he says your name in the stream, it's like, oh yeah. Well, I try to be active in Daniel's live streams.
I was choked about that.
Sometimes I'll put them on in the background. Actually, my girlfriend and I, we both do this. Just to listen to, like, while she's working or at school, and I'll do it while I'm working on my video, because sometimes I need I just need background noise because my brain hates me, so I have to drown it out with Daniel's beautiful voice.
Stuff off here that I don't need anymore. I was like, you know, oh, you can do it individually or randomly. Okay, I wasn't sure which one it was.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. You're a ghost, but what kind of ghost? Like a ghoul, or like a spirit, or
I'm not using anymore.
like what?
Well, I've got like 30 hours.
What kind of ghost are you? Are you more of like
that game for the most part now,
more of a
I don't need anymore.
What are they called?
And so I
poltergeist, or like nearly headless Nick.
Like,
I think is his name from Harry Potter.
180 gigs of.
To where like they're not really the ghost of a dead person. They're like,
all right, there we go.
Oh, he's ready. Let's do this.
For some reason, and maybe it's because I was deleting too much stuff at once. Hey, Joseph, there you go. Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate that. But maybe it's because I was hello there. Too much at once, but
hello there.
A bunch of other files got corrupted.
I need to pause your
which means
Skyward Sword stream. Your Skyward Sword stream from last night.
Oh, you don't want to watch that one.
Wow.
The stream where I spent like way too long on that boss rush.
No.
Embarrassing. Also, I'm joined today by Ginny. Say hello, Ginny.
Well, they can't see.
This is the only time she doesn't talk
at the moment.
She's so loud most of the time. That's okay. She's just enjoying getting pet.
There we go. Now they can see her. I just have to I guess I can just delete this now. So delete.
Did you know that Geek is streaming later?
I do at 1 o'clock your time.
It's exciting. I think it's earlier than that. I think it's in like an hour. So
Is
it'll be like 11 my time. Yeah.
There I am. Okay, there it is.
Jesse, what inspired you to do this stream of my video?
I just wanted to show everyone your tremendous editing skills.
Oh, thank you. Honestly, this was one of the most editing intensive videos, if not the most editing intensive video I've ever made. It was can you not? Sorry.
Actually,
anyway.
can I put it up again, like in the bottom corner, the video? Do you mind?
Sure, if you want.
I know I didn't ask your permission to stream your video, but
you can stream whatever you want, man. You don't need my approval.
Well, legally no, but courteously, yes.
I think people want to see the cat. I just a hunch. Tilt the camera. Gooch myself over. This is her little spot at the desk here.
Yeah.
She likes to sit. Normally she likes to sit and look out the window, but then it's not too bad.
Yeah, so did things get crazy last night? Or was it par for the course?
It was a little crazy.
Yeah.
We'll say.
We had one topic.
Well, we skipped the second one, that's why.
The Reggie thing?
Yeah, that's...
I didn't have time to do the research on that. Oh, actually, no, that is all. I did research for that a long time ago, when the book first came out. And I was going to make an actual video on it. And I was like, actually, it might be more fun to talk about it on the podcast. So
right.
Instead of scripting it out, I just like labeled the 10 things. And then because we got started so late, I just like everything that was going on yesterday, like if you thought the podcast was crazy, like about 2 hours before the podcast was insane. For me, at least. Like, it was probably insane for Daniel as well. Like, his cat just goes bonkers when you feed it
she's not bonkers.
Strawberry milk.
Very chill cat. She's just a very talkative cat.
Yeah, hold it up for everyone. Let us see.
She doesn't very much like being held, to be honest.
Oh, do you hold it like a baby? Do you hold her?
Sometimes.
Her? Oh, we have a super chat. Whoa, Jesse got someone who played Breath of the Wild on.
I'm always on. I've played so much.
Thank you, Taker.
Thank you.
So you know how I have like the white outline on the with everything? I want to do one with like the chat box for when, not the chat box, but for when people donate or subscribe, like it'll give a white outline to it as well. But the hard part is like depending on how long their super chat is, like the white line may cut it off, or it might like go outside of it, or it may not show all of it. So it's very tricky, but I would still somehow like to do it, but I think that would have to be like a feature embedded in the code itself of OBS, not like just an add-on filter or whatever. Yeah.
I do not know.
Anyways, how's your day been? This was a big day for you. How we've only seen streams from you for a good while. You had a teaser video for this video.
People were very confused about the teaser, apparently.
People were confused?
Yeah, so I mean, because I
do they not know what teasers are?
No, I guess. No, they didn't understand what I was teasing.
Apparently.
Oh. I had several comments of people being like, thinking that I was
you were about to drop your hot new record.
No, they thought I was like dropping a mod with remixed dungeons, or that I was part of Second Wind and I was teasing an add-on to Second Wind and stuff like that. I'm like, what? And I keep thinking, like, if these people before commenting that had taken like just the extra 10 seconds to like click on my channel and look at what videos I have on there, they would have understood. But they just commented being confused instead. So, and the thing is, I put in the description exactly what I was teasing too. So if they had just, instead of going to my channel, if they just read the description. But it's fine. It's fine. It's, yeah.
I think the only video that I posted a video specifically just to tease another video was the top 10 best and worst of Ocarina of Time.
Oh.
Because
I do these teasers now and then, though. But
yeah, we were lucky enough to have, because I used comments from people. Like I asked for like everyone's like, what would you change about Ocarina of Time? What did you like the most? Stuff like that. And we were lucky enough to have someone who actually worked on Ocarina of Time give his thoughts, which were basically just like, the worst thing about Ocarina of Time is that it ends.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
But you were saying, I'm sorry, I interrupted you a second ago.
No, I mean,
I think we spoke at the same time.
Yeah, I think people were just confused about what I was teasing for some reason, because they didn't read the description of the video or see what my channel was, so they were just commenting confused. I had to explain to some people, like, no, I run these, I make these videos breaking down dungeon design, and this is just teasing what design I'm doing next. So that's it was a lot of confusion, unnecessary confusion, I would say. Retro guy in the chat says internet people moment. That's exactly what it was. Just internet people being internet people. But yeah, no, the video, I think it turned out good. I think it's one of my best. I mean, if you go back to like my earliest dungeon design stuff from last year, versus then even the Twilight Princess stuff I was doing earlier this year, and then now this one, I think there's a pretty noticeable increase in quality in all of those videos. Like I think it's awesome to be able to step up my game, as it were, and make a better product. You know what I mean?
You remind me of the PlayStation Vita kid.
The what?
He was always on the PlayStation Vita commercials. He was like, step your game up or whatever.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't remember those commercials.
It was when they had their fake president before he got fired.
Oh.
Like he would host some of the E3 stuff as well. I forgot his name, but like they fired him because he was in a commercial for Target that was promoting the Nintendo Wii.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and like it wasn't specifically the Nintendo Wii, it was just like a Black Friday, Christmas type of promotion. And he was in the commercial for it. And they just like let him go. And I'm like, but why? He was the best thing about your E3 conference. Like, yeah, but he was just like a small, I don't want to say small, it's bigger than I am. I've not been in any commercials, but he was a really, really good actor, because they had him play the president of Sony, and then that was for PlayStation 3, and they had some commercials where they were hiring people like it was great because it like all the commercials just told this story of him trying to hire the perfect representative for the PlayStation Vita, and it was just this kid. And I think it's the same kid in, I could be wrong, I think it's the same kid in the movie Role Models.
Oh, that's a good movie. I like that movie.
The one, not the one who loves LARPing, but the other one.
The like little kid who,
yeah, he like steals the juice box or the orange juice or something, and
yeah,
he like drives off in the car.
Moment.
Yeah, I think it's him that he's like the step your game up or whatever. Anyways,
right.
Yeah, so were you able to watch my coverage of your video?
I need to go back and watch it because I did not. I have it open now, but I didn't. I was, in my own Premiere, so I didn't watch it. I'm sorry.
I was hoping you wouldn't be upset about that because I thought about messaging you and doing it, but
free advertising. So.
Well, that's like I know you put a lot of work in it, and that was my thought. Was like, well, I want this to be a surprise for Daniel because I thought about messaging you and asking you if you wanted to be on it with me.
Right.
That way, you could give a live reaction, but you were already talking in the video, so I'm like, well, he doesn't need to give a live reaction, so maybe this will just be a surprise. And I know you put a lot of work in the video, so I wanted to. Share it with other people because sometimes I'll promote it out to on the community page, or I'll ask you to do it or something.
Yeah, and it's always appreciated.
But I thought this might be a more interesting thing. Plus, I kind of felt bad for last night on the podcast for everyone.
Sorry about that.
And so I just wanted to. I thought about doing like a little thing, and then. Yeah. For everyone, and then your stream. But yeah, you were editing. One of the things that I mentioned was if anyone was wondered why you specifically, not anyone else, was asked to start the podcast with me when we both co-created the podcast. It was because you had previously edited a few videos for me, I believe. And I asked you to edit videos for me because your editing was so great from Zelda Informer. But even before Zelda Informer, you had videos on a long lost previous channel.
It's not necessarily long lost. The channel still exists. I just
I didn't know if you wanted me to name it, so I just gave it a quick nickname.
Yeah. But that's an old channel that I used to co-run with actually my siblings. My brothers and I used to run it together. But I think there was too much. The thing is, like with having a shared channel like that, is that we all had our ideas, which was great for like getting content out. Except that there was like a lot of very different content, and because of that,
not good for.
It's not so good on the
of YouTube
things. Yeah, because like what happens is like my oldest brother, he puts out a Doctor Who video, and that's great. But then I'm putting out like a Zelda video, and people who are subscribing, they don't know what they're subscribing for, or they're not getting necessarily what they were subscribing for, that kind of thing. So anyway, so it didn't necessarily work out, but it was a different time. But I think honestly, I've even gone back to watch some of those old videos, and I'm like, yeah, my editing skills have come a long way since then. But for this video that went live today, I think it is some of my best stuff. I tried to have like the Sheikah border there with everything without the buttons, like the HUD stuff.
How did you do that? Were you using 𝗬𝗵𝗲?
No, actually, none of this was done with 𝗬𝗵𝗲. All my Breath of the Wild footage was recorded on Switch, and so of course I heavily used a letterbox filter, or just like the like letterbox is just the widescreen of it, specifically to crop out any HUD elements like hearts, because just to get that sort of cleaner image. And then the biggest thing was the music and Blender. So any music for my videos.
Music in Blender? Yeah, you mentioned previously that you were not taking classes, but you were studying to use Blender.
Yeah. So those are 2 points. The music and the Blender thing are not the same, but the Blender's like 3D modeling basically. But any music I make, or any music that's in my videos that's not just from the game's soundtrack is music I've written.
Yes.
And it's one of the overlooked parts of my channel, I think, is I actually write a fair amount of music, and I really enjoy doing it. So like the intro music, the intro to my streams, for example, I have a song for that. And then I made a really good one for like when I was doing Twilight Princess's dungeon design, and then I made one for this one. And then just, any of the other music that's not Breath of the Wild soundtrack. I wrote that music for the use of, for using in this video. And then a big challenge is usually what I'll do for previous videos is I have like all these guidebooks, and I would scan the maps and then heavily edit them to be like that sort of parchmenty look and that sort of thing, to use for like map screens in the video, to like highlight, okay, we're in this room, and circle it on the little map screen, just simple things like that. But Breath of the Wild's Divine Beasts, its dungeons, don't provide, in my opinion, like a comprehensive map screen. It has that 3D map model, which looks cool, but is not at a glance understandable. Like, you can't look at that that map screen and point to like any individual room. It just looks like a big mess of blue wireframe and the general shape of an elephant, right? So that was a big hurdle for me. Because those map screens, I think, are a big part of the production quality, like, because it's something completely unique to the video rather than just game footage. So I was like, okay, well, how do I get around this? So then I decided, I was a little bit inspired by Monster Maze, who
great guy.
Great dude. He had a video a while back about Ocarina of Time's Water Temple, and he had made a custom map for that video of the dungeon. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try my hand at that. So for this video, I went through hours of Blender tutorials. I downloaded Blender, and I had to learn from scratch how to use the program, which it's actually not that easy to learn. I mean, once you get it, it kind of clicks, but like it's
Daniel, really quick.
It's a whole ordeal. Yeah.
Our best friend Bonnie in the chat, because a moment ago you were talking about your music. They ask which songs are in the video.
So in this video, there is 3 songs that I've written, I think, off the top of my head. The Waiting Room, the instrumental version. I obviously don't want to use songs where I put lyrics in it. The Waiting Room is at the end of the video. The intro song is called Feral Machines, which is obviously meant to be kind of a nod to the Guardians and Divine Beasts, hence the name. Because I was going to name it Wild Machines, because like Breath of the Wild, but then I was like, that's a little too on the nose. But that song was written like with the intent of being like for that intro. Like I was really trying to evoke Breath of the Wild with that song. So there is like the SOS signal, which is actually in all the Divine Beast songs. I put an SOS signal in that song, and then I wanted to make it be all piano and synth. So like it's just that was like all just like kind of broken piano bits and synth to sort of have that Breath of the Wild feel to it, if that makes sense, because then you've got this sort of contrast of the piano almost being like the world of Breath of the Wild, and then the synth being all the Sheikah machines, the shrines, divine beasts, all that technology. So that song's the intro song, and then there's another song called Cedar Voices, which I also wrote to use for Breath of the Wild.
Say it again.
Videos.
Cedar Voices.
Cedar Voices. Yes,
like
and
a cedar
the reason
tree.
for that is, I actually thought of the song while I was hiking. I go hiking sometimes, and cedars are one of my favorite types of trees. And we get tons where I live. We have tons of cedar trees, and they're like huge trees, like they're massive trees. So I wanted that sort of the sort of feeling of I wanted to capture that feeling that I get when I'm hiking, and there's like this sense of wonder in the forest, and you're surrounded by cedar trees, and they just tower over you.
And you said
but
cedar
not
voices.
in like intimidating ways. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like the voice of the trees.
Yes.
You know.
Because
but like they tower
what
over
is it
you,
like?
they surround you.
There's a
in a
saying
way
like that
that's,
the
like,
trees are
not
whispering
scary.
or whatever.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so there's like this sort of voice in the song that's like sort of like a singing ghosty sort of voice. It's like a spiritual sort of voice. You know, if that makes sense. It's
No, it does.
It's one of my.
I actually thought it was a
song I'm
reference to the
pretty proud of,
Koroks.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Because
you know, I mean, you could,
who
you
knows
could
what
see it
kind of
that
wood
way.
they're made out of?
It's
Deku,
it's
probably.
never said. Deku wood. Yeah. That's gotta be it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those 3 songs I wrote for. Well, the waiting room I didn't write for this video, but it works nicely for a lot of videos. But
yes.
those 2, Cedar Voices and Feral Machines, were written for Breath of the Wild, essentially.
For these videos,
Yeah.
or just inspired by Breath of the Wild in general?
I would say Feral Machines was written for this video, but I'll keep using it in other Breath of the Wild videos. Cedar Voices was more just inspired by, and I wanted to write music that I could use in these videos, but it wasn't written as I would say with as much intent as the other one. But yeah, it was kind of inspired by both my own adventures in nature and Breath of the Wild, which kind of, for me, evoke similar emotions.
If that,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense, and it kind of goes full circle with what Miyamoto had said in some interviews on his inspiration for the Zelda series, which also,
Right.
I think the title that best represents that, which Hyrule Fantasy, the original Zelda, I think that is a good job as well, because you're a kid wandering through the woods, you have the fantasy playing in your head, but also Breath of the Wild is a really good title to convey that original feeling that I imagine when you're a kid going through the woods and everything. But before I rudely interrupted you a minute ago about your music, you were talking about learning Blender?
Oh,
and
Blender,
being
yeah,
inspired by the great and powerful Monster Maze.
Yeah, well, it was that was the inspiration there for wanting to learn Blender, just because I think it adds a lot to the production value of the video, having sort of made unique assets for it, or you know what I mean? Like there's almost a personal touch to it then, and it looks great, I think. So yeah, I made so the sort of map screens that I showed in the video, where they are very simple like pans across the map screen. I'm just like keyframing the in-game camera. Then I added like a little red triangle to represent Link when you travel through places, orange things to represent like the terminals and stuff. And it's all very rudimentary, very simple shapes and stuff like that. But the reason that I kept everything as simple as possible is because I didn't want to fall into the traps that the actual in-game map screen does, in that it's so packed of detail that it's not understandable easily. I wanted to keep it like as clean and simple as possible, so that you could just look at it and understand it instantly. And so yeah, like the weirdly the hardest thing to do on those maps is the water. There's some sections that have water in them, and making the water like colored but transparent, it was weirdly difficult to do in Blender for some reason. But everything else, once I understood,
you did that effect on this video?
Yeah, in this video. So and you'll see there's quite a few times where I have the map screen and there's some pools of water.
Yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
That was another thing, is how did you get the models for to do your maps? Like we see here on this video, for the people that are watching, you have very good models, which I also wanted to get into in a second.
Completely handmade by me. Like I didn't import any models, or the only thing I imported into Blender was the background.
You're saying you didn't do what most people do with Unreal Engine?
Right. So that's the only thing I imported into Blender, was just that background. And I didn't originally do that, actually. I had made the whole map with just like a blank background, but then it was like a gray map on a gray background, and it looked flat and boring. So yeah, I imported this sort of blue Sheikah swirling pattern as the background, but everything else is completely handmade by me, or handmade, mouse made, completely made on mouse and keyboard by me. And
I'm looking at it now.
Yeah.
You have like the cylinders, the square rooms, the pathways, everything's like spaced out appropriately to scale.
Well, sort of. I like separated the floors. I made them farther apart than they actually are in the game. So like the first floor and the second floor is like way higher up. But the reason for that is because like when I originally had it at the appropriate height, it was in the way, basically. You couldn't see what was going on in the first floor because that second floor was there. So I just raised it and then like had that red line that connects the two sections of the ramp, basically, just to show these connect, but they're, to like move them apart. But so just kind of spacing things out. And again, the biggest priority was to put enough detail that you understand what this is, but not too much detail that you can't, or that it becomes like too complicated to understand. You know what I mean? Like the understandability was the main priority with those map models. So like just like certain things, like there's on the top floor there, it showed it on this video, but there's a top floor where there's the last terminal, and there's like ramps up and then a platform with a hole in it. And so I just had like the hole has like different like weird shapes and designs. Like it's not a perfect square, but I just made the hole a perfect square because I was like, well, if I spend all this time doing all this extra stuff, it's just gonna be overwhelming. Like I don't want to do information overload on the map. So yeah, just keeping sometimes less is more. I tend to do minimalism where I can. So yeah.
A part I really enjoyed in your video was, and I'll go back to the dungeon divine beast in a second, but you have an outro I noticed in this video.
That was born out of necessity.
Was that also anything from Blender, or was that just your normal editing skills?
No, that's just Final Cut. That's just normal editing. But the reason I did that is because I'm very grateful. I've gotten like a very sudden influx of supporters on Patreon and channel members, and my old end card was sort of more simple text, and just like the text on
it's like
screen.
the link to the past thing. It just got too long. The list of people got too long, so it sort of was born of necessity. I wanted to make sure to fit everybody in, and also I'd been meaning to reorganize how it was done. I wanted to organize it by tier, so like by the top supporters at the top, for example. And so I kind of put everything into a document, reorganized where everyone's names are by sort of the tier that they're at and how long they've been a supporter, and then I just figured just a simple credit scrolling was best. But then it looked like it was lacking sort of visual flair, so I ended up adding in this sort of Sheikah text to sort of act as like a shadow to it. I thought then it just sort of fits in with the feel of this video that way. So so I think it looks really nice. But it's a new intro, new outro, new music, map screens made in Blender. Lots of cropping. All right.
Lots of effort.
Oh, that's a really good shot.
Oh, which one?
Oh, I thought you did that for a second. It was a scene from Age of Clans. Where
I did a couple of Age of Calamity cutscenes in there just to sort of round out some. Like I needed some extra shots of Mipha, so I pulled some Age of Calamity cutscenes just to like use for some of the storytelling, that kind of thing. You talked about how one of the negatives for the Breath of the Wild dungeons, divine beasts, however you want to refer to them, they
one of the negative things that you mentioned, it may have been the only negative thing. No, there was others, because it only had 3 enemies unless you count the malice eyes.
And then it's only 10, which is still like a very small amount compared to other games. Yeah.
But the smallness of it, and I hadn't said this previously or even thought about it, but I dubbed it the Skyward Sword effect, to where like Twilight Princess was big and open and everything, but they thought that it felt sort of empty. So in Skyward Sword, instead of having massive overworld that's got some stuff in it but not as much as it may have needed, in Skyward Sword they used the different in my head I keep thinking provinces. What were they called?
I think provinces, I don't
is that the term they use for it?
Surface. I don't even think they use a term for it at all. Provinces works. But
is it like the Laneri province? I want to say it starts with a T or an L. I don't know. Anyways, everyone knows what I'm talking about. So they used instead of like one larger world, they used these smaller segmented areas, but they tried filling it up with as much stuff as they could without making it seem like there was too much going on in it. So it was like almost everything in the overworld, like before you actually got to the dungeon, the overworld itself is usually a puzzle or has stuff that you need to do. And it's filled with enemies and puzzles, and so just exploring, even if you're not trying to make it to the dungeon, you're just exploring around, you still have to solve certain puzzles and stuff. And with Breath of the Wild, it seems with the divine beasts, they were very limited on what they could do, because they could always just make the divine beasts like twice the size, but then you just have really massive things walking around, and they're already pretty giant, and they're all moving and walking around. The insides are turning and moving and stuff, and like the elephant's trunks going up and down. If you're in the desert, there's like lightning shooting around beside it and everything. So like I imagine the Switch would be able to handle that, but maybe the Wii U wasn't, so maybe there was a limit to how big they were. But that limit on how big those divine beasts are, even though they are massive, is it limits you on like, okay, the divine beast is very clearly this size. It's not like the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time. When you walk into it, it's like you can see, oh, this was a house, like there's the inside of it or whatever, and it's massive on the inside, but you can't see how big it is from the outside. It's almost what they did with the Snow Peak ruins and Twilight Princess, to where like this is very clearly from the outside, you can see that it's this big, so we need to make the dungeon inside this big. We're usually
the thing is with that is that like Snow Peak does it effectively. Same with like the sand ship in Skyward Sword.
Yes,
it's the same thing, right? Like they have, but those dungeons didn't like feel as small as the Divine Beast does, in my opinion. You know, and I think even though it's smaller, maybe or even maybe they're comparable sizes, I think just having some of that navigational structure where you have like keys and locked doors, and you have to sort of like zigzag around and pick apart the dungeon, and there's a lot more enemies and obstacles. It feels bigger than maybe it is, whereas the Divine Beasts are sadly just like very empty when it comes to enemies. And oh, my headphones came unplugged.
Oh, you're good.
See, stuff like that. So it's just and there's no locked doors inside Vah Ruta, and so it's very, I don't know, it just feels like you can get from one end to the other very quickly without any trouble, without any obstacles. So I still like them, and I wanted to like put that out there in the video early on, that like this is still my favorite game, and I still really do enjoy these. You know, just because I have these criticisms doesn't mean I hate it. I think a lot of people assume that you can only love or hate something, and there's no in between. but yeah, I mean, I just don't think it, like going into them again after playing through all these other Zelda dungeons and breaking them down room by room and everything, as like kind of makes them feel very small and empty and kind of lackluster in comparison.
Yeah, that's like that's whenever I said it has like the Skyward Sword effect. That's kind of what I was meaning, is that like it's the overall size is smaller, but it seems like there's a lot of puzzles and variations of solving those puzzles inside of that small area or smaller area, because the whole thing, like in some of them, the entire section's rotating around. Sometimes it has multiple sections that are rotating around. I think Vah Ruta has different ones, and then Vah.
Boris is my favorite. Spoilers for when we get to that video, but that one's my favorite, and I think that one feels the most like a fully. Vah Ruta is my favorite. It feels the most like a fully fleshed out dungeon to me. It's also widely regarded as the hardest one.
Vah Ruta to me seems like the fully fleshed out dungeon.
Okay.
But I don't know, maybe that's just like where you can angle it so like it, instead of rotating around, it tilts, and that changes things. But yeah, there was one, like it was just like a 3-second clip in this video that you made. Wonderful editing, by the way. And in that 3-second clip, you had like just one scene that I imagine took like 20 minutes. Like after you already had the gameplay, like I imagine it took 20 minutes, because it was like each Ocarina of Time dungeon like stacked on top of each other in a row.
Oh yes.
So you had like all those scenes, and it's like you either had to make like 10 extra rows on your editing column, board, whatever you want to call it, or you created a new project and then rendered out that little clip and then placed that one clip in there. But all that extra work just for 3 seconds. So you had like a bunch of extra rows that just had that one clip on it.
Like a power on that one section, just like of all these dungeons. Yeah.
Now I am confused. We spoke in private. Maybe it was before and or after one of the podcasts last week, maybe. When you're spanking the booty on that flurry rush. Which reminds me, I said something earlier. I need to tell you, but when we were speaking in private, I was talking about. No, you were talking about this video coming up or whatever, and I asked you like which divine beast are you doing first, and I said that like I mentioned, and you did in this video as well, that it feels like the game kind of pushes you towards this divine beast first, that you just kind of make your way to the Zoras before other areas, and it only having those 3 enemies in it, which I never put together in my head, but that makes there's the horse Jebby. It makes even more. Speaking of Jebby, do we see the return of Greg in any of these videos?
Not yet.
Not don't
yet.
Say no more.
I don't know if you will or not.
Yeah,
but
you don't know anyone who works at Capt Bergerson Productions.
Nobody.
Yeah, so I thought I heard you say that like because you were like, I think you said something like, in the video I talk about why I think the game leads you towards this double rainbow, leads you towards this divine beast or this area first. And I could have sworn I had mentioned this divine beast in the Zora area, and you mentioned, I thought, a different area was the first one, or like a different divine beast was your first one. So I was actually surprised when I found out it was Vah Ruta, because in my head I was expecting one of the other Vahs.
I'm not sure. No, it's definitely Vah Ruta that was even on my first playthrough, that was the one I ended up on first. And
do you think?
Yeah, no, that's always the one that feels to me like the first one. And just because, like I mentioned in the video, like they point you in that direction, and then there's just that whole section of the map where all these Zoras are like telling you to go this way to talk to Sidon. And so it very much, like, the rest of them don't.
I think that's the exact part you're at right now in the video, where you're talking about how it.
I think so.
Because Sidon's there.
Yeah.
I earlier when I was watching it, I was like, oh, look at how good he is, because you were fighting an enemy or whatever, and it was just like a perfect eye shot on a guardian. And I was like, if you're ever depressed, if you're ever sad or lonely, or something bad happens, if your wife divorces and leaves you, and you need a good pick-me-up, just go watch a video of Daniel fighting a Lynel.
Yeah.
Because you have like perfect skills when it comes to fighting some of these enemies. Like it's almost like just muscle, a natural muscle reflex, or a natural reflex to where,
I mean, it
like when I fight them
to get to that point.
There's that old racist Zora. So when
that was one of my that was like not planned initially for having Muzu. And then it comes up and says racist Zora, but then I was like, I don't know why I thought of that, putting that, but I was like, I just thought it would be really funny to just have that pop up, because like when you meet other prominent characters, like it comes up Sidon Zora Prince, and there's like the line reveal for the title, and I was just like, I don't know, I was just throwing a little gag in there, because I always joke about Muzu being racist. So
do you think someone in the chat had mentioned that they didn't know that you could not kill the Lynel and just walk away after collecting your things?
Yeah. I mean, I still did, but even
just not
even
on
when
camera.
I streamed the game, I like had you see the Lynel die, at least you see him like explode, but I like, even when I streamed this game recently, and I got to this point, like I have enough shock arrows to skip it, and I still went and killed the Lynel anyways, just for fun. But you don't have to. You just have to have enough shock arrows. You need to have 20, or Sidon won't take you. So as long as you have 20, you can skip the Lynel. But they just point you in that direction because you actually can get a lot of shock arrows. Like he drops 10 when he dies at least. And then there's a bunch scattered around, so you can very easily get that many. So yeah, it's just more like a good recommendation, I guess. Plus, it forces you to be good at combat. The downside to that is that the Lynel is harder than like anything else in the Divine Beast, except for Waterblight, maybe. So,
what do you think about the different forms of malice in the upcoming Breath of the Wild 2? If it were like, do you different, like now we just have like the malice eyes that act as like barricades. I think Age of Clams, the malice like turned into the shadow things,
the hollows.
Which was an idea that I still think that they stole from us, because I was like, wouldn't it be great if in the next Breath of the Wild, if they had like, or in the DLC, like instead of fighting against like just these versions of the Calamity, like if they had the possessed Daruk and possessed 𝗵𝗲 and everyone that you fought against, that way they would be at least a little bit like they could literally have the same moves or whatever, but just give it a bit more variation, as opposed to fighting against the same thing with like different arm cannons, basically. And because you fight against like possessed Zelda and Twilight Princess, and so like it's something Ganon had done before, and then when Age of Clams came out, you just put like a big X over that. When Age of Clams came out, they had that, and I was like, they watched our podcast and stole my idea. When realistically it was probably an idea they had long before that. But before I let you go, my final question, this isn't related to your video, it was just something I think I was talking to Bree about it the other day, was that so you know that Kakariko Village and Korok Forest were switched. They said shortly before the game released, which I don't believe. I think it was a little bit longer before the game released because it was that way at E3. So when they say shortly before the game released, maybe they mean like a year before or something, because it seemed like at E3 the previous year, the map kind of looked the same,
Right.
although they didn't really get off the Great Plateau. But anyways,
You know, I might have to go rewatch some of that to see if I can spot it.
yeah,
If I can spot the forest.
is when you get off the Great Plateau, your first main quest that it asks you to do, you don't have to do it, but the first that it asks you to is to go to 𝗏𝗏𝗃 village. And previously, if it was where Korok Forest was, then you would have had like
right by the castle,
directly behind the castle. And maybe they didn't want to force you, because they might think, oh well, I could just go into the castle and then skip it or whatever, or like maybe it would be too difficult at first when you're first playing the game, because it's hard enough fighting a Lynel, but if you get like trapped in one of the rooms with the Lynels when like you're surrounded by all the guardians, so it seems like maybe they did that not because they felt like, oh, this would be like it makes more sense for it to be here based off of difficulty as opposed to anything like that, because it is odd seeing 𝗏𝗏𝗃 village not next to Death Mountain, because 𝗏𝗏𝗃 village has switched places on the map, like it's been in different areas of the map, but it's always been usually beside Death Mountain, unless it's like a Link to the Past that but that's just a weird outlier. So what are your thoughts on that? Because it tells you to go there to 𝗏𝗏𝗃 village,
right
and
on the money.
they switched it so that you wouldn't have to like sneak behind the castle, or you might think that it's just too hard and give up or whatever.
I think so, because if it was where the forest is now, you'd have to go sneak past the castle, go past the military training camp, which is a pretty enemy filled area as well. So there would be just a lot of baddies there, basically. So I think that I think that would be a lot of challenge for so early in the game, especially on your first playthrough, right? So it just makes more sense from like the world design standpoint to not have you cross paths with so many guardians so immediately after getting off the plateau, basically. Because if you wanted to avoid the castle, you'd have to go like such a long way around the river and stuff. So and then also there's the fact that then the Master Sword would be way closer to the plateau as well, which would make it almost like easier to find then, maybe too easy to find. So that's a thought too.
Bonnie in the chat says, Jesse, you said spanking the Moblin reminded you of something.
People want to know what you're thinking of.
I think that was what I was talking about with you fighting the Lynel. I think that's what it reminded me of.
Oh, okay.
Because you were fighting the Moblin, and I was like, yeah. I think that's what I believe that's what I was referring to. Nothing not safe for work, Bonnie. But Daniel, I appreciate you for coming on for an hour. I think it's been about an hour. I expected your video to be a bit longer because they were reaching like 30 to 40 minutes, but that made sense with the size of the dungeons on the videos you were covering previously, and whereas this one's a bit smaller.
Long.
Yeah.
Long. So, like my longest was City in the Sky, and that was like 42 minutes, I think, off the top of my head. So yeah, the fact that this one was 30 minutes shows there's still a lot to talk about, even though the dungeon is so short. But that progression section was like the shortest it's ever been, right? There was just so much more lore and just level design and music stuff to talk about, so it still ended up
and you also mentioned the music, and that was when you said that a lot of people not a lot of you mentioned, paraphrasing, some people were negative about the music in Breath of the Wild. And I had mentioned it was actually one of the first videos I was going to have Miss click on, which was the top 10 best and worst of Breath of the Wild. We talked about the best and worst of Ocarina of Time earlier, but in Breath of the Wild, on the worst, I actually had the music. So I am one of those people. I feel bad for being one of those people, but I begin the video by saying that this game's basically a 10 out of 10. So any negative stuff that I mention is just going to be me nitpicking. Like, it's not something that's bad. It's just compared to all the other stuff, this is the worst thing. Like, it says something about how great Breath of the Wild is, when one of the most frequent complaints people have about the worst thing in it is like, oh, well, sometimes it rains too much when you're trying to climb.
Well, it does rain too much.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but it's like, if that's one of your only complaints that you have, then it's like, so not the gameplay, not the dungeons, not the exploration, not the characters, not the storyline, not the music, not the combat, not the bosses, none of that. Just it rains too much.
It does rain too much. But I think the music, like, I think people just, like, really love classic Zelda music, and I also do. Don't get me wrong. I think Zelda music is iconic. It's fabulous. Yeah. It's bombastic. It's everything. But like, if you have just like a classic like Hyrule Field theme playing constantly when you are out exploring the overworld, like, it would get so annoying because of how much time you spend exploring out in the overworld compared to other Zelda games, right? And I think that there are even some tracks like the cold area theme, you know, like that kicks in, you get to a cold mountain and then that theme kicks in, you know, you know the one. I did not imitate it very well, but it's got that cold music, and I get annoyed with that one.
Is that in the tundra as well?
Yeah. And I get annoyed, like, that one plays too often. So, like, imagine if there was a different Hyrule Field theme. It would just get so annoying. And that one only plays in certain areas. So I think that just, like, having the music be more sparse and more reserved, I think works for Breath of the Wild. And I think that's why a lot of open world games have very sparse soundtracks.
Actually,
but when they do use music, like, say you get to Hyrule Castle, it hits all the harder because of how much silence there has been before that, you know. That's my opinion, at least.
So I just looked it up because I remembered that it wasn't Koji Kondo who composed on this game, that composed on all the others, but it says Manaka Kataoka, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, I apologize, Yasuaki Iwata, 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃. I don't know how to pronounce any of those names, I apologize. But they had those three composers. I don't know what they've worked on previously, but I think they did a good job getting the feeling of the atmosphere for the game.
For sure. Absolutely. The atmosphere in this game is some of the best ever, in my opinion. You
are currently playing through Skyward Sword on your streams. Is that the spicy mode or is that the normal mode?
Oh no, that's on hero mode. It's very spicy.
But Daniel,
yeah,
as we discovered on last week's podcast, no Zelda game has ever had a New Game Plus.
So incorrect. So incorrect. Yeah, I don't know. Whoever wrote that article was not doing the research, not fact checking themselves.
I don't like to like be rude to people, but like whenever we're doing like the clickbaity top 10 lists and stuff that we used to do that people would send us, I would insult the articles and stuff, but it was like we wouldn't like reach out to the people on social media and be like, oh, you suck and blah blah blah. Like, it was just like the content itself, not necessarily the people that wrote it. And because like I could make a bunch of crappy videos, but that doesn't mean I'm crappy. But it's just like, maybe, you know, someone's just having like a bad day to where like they're writing in something and they don't really want to be writing it, but they're told to, so they're just like, sure. Because there could be any reason, and that's maybe probably why so many have the top 10 stuff. But it was like, this article was like, the person was talking about it as if it was like they actually had like knowledge and stuff of the series or whatever. Like what was that one video from, was it BuzzFeed on the Zelda timeline, every link is the descendant of the previous link.
Yeah, that was, or no, maybe that was Polygon or something. I think even, I'm not sure now. I'd have to go back and check it. But it wasn't good.
Yeah,
I remember that.
I thought it was BuzzFeed, but like, yeah, like the person in it was like dressed up like Link, and she was like, I think it was like a girl, and it was a girl explaining it to the guy, and they both seemed like very not knowledgeable. And I think that's just like an assignment that they may have gotten to where someone was like, oh, we need a Zelda video. Breath of the Wild's popular.
Yeah. Or maybe it was. Maybe I'm thinking of a different one then. I don't remember the costumes, so...
I mean, there's plenty of bad Zelda videos on YouTube. Go look at half of mine. So your Skyward Sword video, you're playing through... Almost said Master Quest, spicy mode.
Mm-hmm.
For
it's very spicy.
People that don't know, what's the origins of spicy mode?
Isn't that just... What was it? That was just like the Japanese name? Like that's what they called it instead of hero mode?
Yeah, it was right? Spicy mode in Japan was the name of it. Really just like, what was the silent room?
Mm-hmm.
And Skyward Sword?
I think it's the spirit realm in Japan, in Japanese.
Yeah.
Which is a little more... or maybe, no, it's the siren realm, I think. Because even the in-game like Hylian text actually says like siren on it, on like the gates and stuff that appear. I might be wrong. I can't remember which it is. It might be both.
What was your how far did you make it on your previous stream, and where can people expect you to venture off to in your next Skyward Sword stream?
I am partway through the Song of the Hero quest, so we're getting close to the end of the game. So be finishing that up on Wednesday.
Here's a question I have.
Okay, here's an answer I have.
How much weight do you think Beetle could just like deadlift? Because like he's got all that muscle from powering that shop.
That's a big backpack that he carries around.
Oh, that and Breath of the Wild as well, yeah. But I'm just talking about like even more impressive in Skyward Sword. He's got that giant floating shop that he powers himself.
2 tons of weight. That's what I got.
Yeah.
2 tons.
Like his legs are stronger than gravity. So
they are.
What is it? He could probably like jump out of a black hole. Anyways, I noticed like you kept cutting down every piece of grass you came by in your last stream. Do you have like a foliage phobia?
No, I just want to get them rupees.
Why do you think Beetle doesn't cut down all the grass instead of having a shop that no one except for you can go to?
It's the thrill of the chase for Beetle.
Yeah, he probably he
loves
like,
the merchant game.
So he's had Beetle's shop, like different variations, for like thousands of years. So with a family business that's successful, where you are the sole proprietor, he probably has like tons and tons of inheritance. So he's probably rich. He just does what he does for the love of it, not because he needs the money.
Just loves it.
That's why he's not cutting down the grass. He's like, I don't need rupees. You can have them. I really love selling people wallet pouches.
Yeah.
And fish food.
Collecting bud.
Yeah.
Those are 2 loves.
So
Bug and entrepreneurial.
Wait,
shit.
Bugs? When does he... Oh yeah, because okay. Yeah.
He loves bugs.
Yeah.
He has a special Beetle in
Do you
Skyward
think
Sword
Beetle, if they would have thought of Beetle in the era of Ocarina of Time instead of just Wind Waker, do you think he would have been the sea item guy in Ocarina of Time?
Maybe. I don't know. He definitely would have been able to buy bugs from you, I think. Then again, he doesn't... No, you can't... I was going to say, he doesn't buy bugs from you in Wind Waker, but you can't collect bugs in Wind Waker, so that's probably why.
Yeah. So when can people expect your next stream and video?
I'm streaming tomorrow night. It's gonna be Shovel Knight night, because I'm still working through those games. And Wednesdays are Zelda days on stream, so we're still working on Skyward Sword. And then I'm still in the writing phase for my next dungeon design video, so I don't know when that'll be out. Probably a couple weeks.
And
but
before we get to where people can follow you, today is a special day for our co-host, the Geek Apprentice. It is her birthday. She turned 97, I believe.
97.
Wow. Was it? She's doing a stream later today for Animal Crossing. And she mentioned her mom was going to be on it?
Yeah. That's in like 5 minutes, so maybe we should wrap this up.
Yeah, that's why I was getting to the end thing. I was mentioning her because I was going to let people know they can, if you want to post a link in the chat for people to go to.
Sure, I'll pull it up here.
Go support her on her birthday. There's a link to her YouTube in the description, but there should be a link in the chat coming up momentarily. But yeah, Daniel, thank you for joining for this hour or hour and a half of time. Thank you for the amazing editing work you did on that video. I'm just grateful to witness it. And yeah, where can people find you?
All the links are in the description, but everything is Capped Bergerson, and I make Zelda videos, obviously, if you haven't been paying attention. But yeah, make sure to go check out. There's like 40 of these dungeon design videos that I've made. So if you really liked this one and you want to see maybe some opinions or analyses of older or previous Zelda games as well, go check those out.
And a lot of them have theories and lore in them as well.
Yes, lots of that. So,
all right.
Yes.
Happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you for coming, hanging out with us. Hope you had a wonderful time. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you,